Hi, I'm Alan.
Hi, this is Dionysus.
Hi, I'm Kyle.
And hi, this is Breaker, and you're listening to Magic Hour, a podcast about all things Treasure DAO. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of Magic Hour. We have a really great episode for you tonight. I think you're all going to enjoy it. But first, guys, what's going on in the Magic ecosystem? Tell me what's on your radar. Dion?
Yeah, so my news and notes is actually a little bit more about the Arbitrum network and something that is relevant for both you listeners out there who are not participating in the Magic ecosystem or the Treasureverse, and also everyone who is a participant. Arbitrum is collaborating with the crypto artist Ratwell, who founded Tubby Cats, and also something called Project Galaxy, which is a product of Bullet Labs. And they're going to be kind of pitting community projects on the Arbitrum network against each other. So you can go vote on your favorite projects in the coming months. And you could be getting up to 17 free exclusive NFTs. So if you're not involved in Magic, or you are currently, this is a great introduction to the Arbitrum network, regardless of your stance.
Wow, that's awesome. I had not heard about that. I actually enjoy Ratwell's art a lot. I think the Tubby Cat project is super cool, and I think he's part of Artifact or something else. I'm not sure which one, but that's pretty awesome. Cool. Alan, what about you?
All right, so for my news and notes for this episode, for everyone listening out there, first thing first, for on Trove Marketplace, the newest member or the newest project that's going to be listed on there is Mushrooms, so that's pretty cool. They've been there for a while. As a matter of fact, it's one of the first projects I actually kind of got to know about, honestly, when I was getting introduced to Treasure and just the entire ecosystem as a whole. So it's really nice to see that they're being integrated as well. And another thing is just today, as of April 12th, we saw $1.5 million worth of magic taken out. And I think that's around 500,000 magic, as far as I believe. And that may have correlated to the small dip that we saw today. We dipped to around almost around $2. We dipped around, I think, 2.8, and now, I mean, we ended up bouncing back up, and now we're sitting at $2.29. But there's probably obviously more reasons to why that dip happened as well. But I feel like that definitely could have been one of the catalysts to why something like that occurred.
I mean, I would imagine it definitely had something to do with the drop. 1.5 magic is quite a bit.
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely no small amount of money being taken out. And someone from the one Discord actually ended up telling me as well that from their wallet address, they later on transferred that from the Arbitrum network straight back to the Binance. So that's pretty honestly curious, and kind of wondering what the thought process all behind that was. But I mean, obviously, the person has their own reasons on why they're doing that.
Yeah, and they certainly do. There's probably a litany of different reasons. One of which, in my opinion, is relevant just for around this time. It's tax season if you're a U.S. citizen, and they might be selling some of their magic so that they could pay their taxes. They might have had a very good year last year.
Yeah, and honestly, for Canadians as well, all any of the Canadians listening out there, it's tax season for us as well, so it makes sense, gotta get that tax returns back in.
Alan, I completely forget that you're Canadian too, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I did not know that. I honestly don't know much about, I guess, the governmental infrastructure of Canada, so I'm happy that you brought that up, and I look forward to more insight on how Canada kind of deals with NFTs and crypto in general. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
My news and notes this week, I have a couple different pieces. First up, by the time you're listening to this, you might have noticed that we updated our Magic Hour logo. I'm happy to say that we were gifted this by Digital Strategies team. We're going to tag them in the notes and on Twitter probably. But I'm really happy with how it came out, and I'm excited for you all to see it and recognize it. Also, more relevant to Treasure DAO, Seed of Life announced that their game is going to start on April 18th. So that's pretty exciting. And I believe our 13th episode will be dropping on that day as well. So actually, strike that. This episode is dropping that day, or today if you're listening to it. So enjoy Seed of Life, everyone who's out there playing it and excited for it. And finally, brief update on the treasure bag that I bought. I believe that treasures on OpenSea. Actually, I'm going to use Gem now to go there because I think that Gem is the better aggregator for the market. Right now we're looking at a 0.155 floor for treasure bags. So just a little bit higher from where I bought it from. And if we look at the marketplace for treasures, the Unbreakable Pocket Watch is currently sitting at, there it is, 69 magic, which I believe is 0.052 ETH. So it's falling. Last week it was 0.07. The week before that I think it was 0.10 ETH. So not too good right now, but I still feel bullish on it. And actually we still don't even know if they can be transferred. So who knows what to expect.
And honestly, just regarding the marketplace and touching on Seed of Life, I was just looking at today as well. I saw a good amount of Seed of Life getting picked up today as well off Treasure, which was really nice to see. And as we're getting closer to the launch date, I guess you could say that people are still bullish on Seed of Life and they're they're excited for what's to come. So it's really nice to see some activity just on the marketplace for specifically Seed of Life as we get closer to the launch date for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's got to be at least 30 different trades that happened in the last 24 hours, so that's pretty exciting.
That is. It's good to see.
You sound very excited, Dion.
Yeah, I'm a little bit sick, so.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
This week, what I wanted to talk about with you guys was we have two projects in the treasure ecosystem that recently announced their own Flywheel style mining initiatives. Those two projects being BattleFly and Realm. And I thought it would be great if we could compare the two initiatives, so to speak, understand how they're going to incorporate their Flywheel and how it relates to Magic for you, the users out there, and kind of theorize which one will probably be the better or the more advantageous project to be in, and whether it's going to work out for them. And I'm curious to see where the discussion goes because we're just getting started with these types of changes. But let's start out with BattleFly, who, like I said, just recently announced their Flywheel, which involves staking your magic with BattleFly, who will then stake all that magic in the Atlas mine with Legion Genesis, Legions all classes, right? And Grins and Honeycombs. Is that right?
Yeah, they want to maximize the percent return from the Atlas mine.
And how are they planning on doing this, and what's their method for enticing the users? What's in it for me, Breaker, to stake my magic with BattleFly as opposed to just staking it in the Atlas mine, aside from the extra missions that I'll be getting, or is that all of it?
Well, that's a good question. And as far as I understand it, it's kind of like you're betting on the success of the BattleFly project partners. So they're taking the money that's raised by staking with BattleFly, as I understand it, and they're partnering with 10 projects that are baking magic staking into their gameplay experiences, which will hopefully create a positive loop of creating a new project that incentivizes users to stake magic so that more magic is staked, increasing the value of magic, and also allowing those new users who are staking their magic to be added to the initial pot of BattleFly staked magic. So their cut, BattleFly's cut, is continuing to grow, allowing them to invest in new projects, allowing them to continue their
Got
revenue
it.
growth. Yeah.
So now, why will I be getting, I guess, whitelist access to these quote unquote 10 other projects for staking my magic? Because I'm giving up magic emissions by staking with BattleFly. And is there a minimum I have to stake with BattleFly?
That's a really good question. As far as I understand, yes. Basically, the price that you are paying before giving up your magic, quote unquote, right? Because it's not necessarily given up; it's just being used for an alternate purpose for the time being. So yes, you will be one of the additional rewards in addition to. I think a return on your magic staked is that whitelist status given for those 10 projects. In addition to that, I do believe the minimum is 50 magic. Is that
Okay.
right?
I'm not sure. Let's see. What do they have on their Flywheel page?
There, there, may, there may not be a minimum. Or I might be conflating it with Realm.
Well, we haven't gotten to Realm yet, but
Yeah.
it might be. What I do find interesting is that Battlefly is pretty transparent in that they're going to take a 10% fee of all emissions generated on behalf of the Flywheel partners, which I understand, like they want, but 10% is pretty significant, and then the other 90% of the emissions is going to the partners themselves. So it doesn't sound like the user who's giving their magic to Battlefly gets any magic back. But it says here that they will receive whitelist spots, exclusive NFTs, and token emissions and in-game rewards. Which, if they're in-game rewards, they better be valuable because, again, the user is giving up their magic emissions that they could potentially be earning from the Atlas mine by going this route. And I think this also matters now because there aren't any harvesters. And as we discussed last week on the when we were discussing Magic Dragon DAO, I think that this presents another opportunity for the, I guess, third-party treasure DAO apps like Magic Dragon DAO and BattleFly and Realm to take away some of the magic that is in the Atlas mine. But at the same time, it's still putting the money or putting the magic back into the Atlas mine, right?
Yeah, you're essentially, I think, investing in the infrastructure of the Treasureverse is a way that I've thought about it. Or to use their analogy, you're investing in future games or cartridges to be plugged into the Nintendo. And
Yeah, that makes sense. That
yeah,
makes sense.
so I think it will be really interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, as an investor, I'm going to be choosing this if I believe that the whitelist, the in-game NFTs, emissions, etc., will be net more valuable than the Atlas Mine emissions. And for, I think, a lot of people that maybe don't have a lot of high percent booster NFTs, like an all class or a Grin or a Honeycomb, it very well could be.
Oh, I agree. I think that you're going to get a lot of boost out of staking your magic with Battlefly, but if Magic Dragon DAO is just doing straight staking and giving you all the emissions, and they also have 3 all classes and 20 grins and honeycombs, then I don't know. I'm personally inclined to stake with Magic Dragon DAO because I'm going to get those magic emissions right away. But, it might work out for Battlefly. But I'm curious, what you guys think after we discuss Realm's plan for their flywheel, if you will, and we can determine which one makes more sense outside of, say, Magic Dragon DAO or other guilds who are doing something similar.
Yeah, and honestly, just another thing about Battlefly as well is, they're supported and backed by Clock Snatcher DAO. And I guess you can say this is one of the first kind of sightings we can see in terms of, the guilds showing the emissions being made from them. Because remember back when the guilds talk was kind of, being brought up, and it was there's a lot of hype being built around it, that a lot of these guilds would have a lot of alt classes or have a lot of higher tier legions to help generate those emissions that you would need. I guess you could say this is the first touch up somehow of some sort. We can see if that kind of starting to build into the ecosystem itself, as BattleFly is, inputting these within 10 other projects. So it's going to be like mini Atlas mines through each of the games, and they're going to be using their own emissions and their own multipliers to help boost up those emissions as well. So it's kind of like this is the guild type of mine that we kind of were looking for at the beginning to some extent, but at the same time I feel like in the future there are going to be more things, and obviously tweaks made around with this stuff to obviously generate the highest APR that we can get. But I guess you could say this is the first thing we're kind of seeing coming to the game, well, the ecosystem as of right now.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting if we see more guilds popping up. The plan from the Magic team was that there would only be 6 harvesters, so I wonder if harvesters are going to be limited to one guild, or like one harvester, one guild, or if multiple guilds can participate in one harvester. I think that we will definitely see probably some sort of curve war style dynamic coming up in this ecosystem. I'm kind of interested to see what happens.
Huh. Yeah, no, that will be really interesting. To that point, governance was discussed in the Flywheel Medium article, or in the Flywheel BattleFly document, and it'll be really interesting to see how, if one, they develop a governance token, and two, how it will be distributed between whale contributors and of course smaller fish.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just a small fish in this sea, so I don't know if I'll even participate in that type of governance, but that will be very interesting, because what we're going to see from a lot of these projects participating with BattleFly is they're going to be creating their own tokens. And I guess if Magic creates their own AMM, like we discussed last week, then maybe that's going to be part of it. All these new tokens popping up, which probably makes sense in the long run, because then they really don't need to focus on providing liquidity on other exchanges necessarily. But that's a conversation for a different day, and we're just speculating at this point. But let's like I said, let's talk about Realm's plan, and then we can kind of discuss a bit further about which one we like more and why we like it. So for those of you out there who have followed us from the beginning, you know that we've spoken about Realm a couple times now. And for those of you this might be your first episode listening, Realm is one of the first projects we discussed on the Magic Hour podcast. We actually discussed it before it minted out. And from what I've seen, it's actually one of the few projects in the Treasure DAO right now that is holding its floor price, which is pretty cool to see. Not too much gameplay beyond what we normally do with all of our different dApps that we're playing around with, and we'll get to that later on in this episode. But Realm just announced their Season 2 plan. And guys, I don't know if you read the light paper that I shared with you yesterday, but basically what they're going to create is something called the Builders Guild. And that kind of touches on the Realm gameplay aspect, which is you have your Realm, you're building cities with farms and aquariums, and I think research centers is the other one. But what they want to do is they want to create this Builders Guild, which is going to be their Flywheel approach, which basically is asking all the Realmers to stake 500 magic into their pool, which they will then stake in the Atlas mine. They've already indicated that they have 3 all-class legions, as well as a combination of 20 grins and honeycombs. And what they're saying is that if you stake with them, they're calling it the Magic Refinery. And they're going to provide in-game benefits that help the longevity of your realm. It's funny, in the white paper they wrote longevity. I don't know if that's even a word. Actually, it's even misspelled because it's longevity. But what they've said is you'll get back 90% of the staked amount after 1 year, and then the remaining 10% goes towards their operational costs, which is kind of funny because that's exactly the way BattleFly laid out theirs. Behind the scenes, I wonder if Realm and BattleFly are working together, and that's why we're seeing these announced at the same time. But we'll talk about that later. But what they've indicated with their 10% is that they're gonna hire new developers, artists, and game designers. They're gonna look to develop additional partnerships, secure high value assets, and kind of build out the Realm ecosystem a bit further. They've also indicated some starting APRs. And so they're going to potentially get you a 200% APR on your Magic staked. And then in addition to that, you're going to produce collectibles that you can sell on the Treasure Marketplace. You'll own all in-game structures that produce value and are sellable in the Treasure Marketplace. There will be one-of-one Realmverse art. There's going to be world events. And there's going to be future airdrops. Now, I don't know if this is just if you're part of the Builders Guild. Yes, you have to be part of the Builders Guild. And if you have 5 realms in one wallet, you'll only receive rewards for your highest ranked realm. So this might be an indication that if you have multiple realms, you might want to split them up into multiple wallets, but it will also cost you, I think, 500 magic per wallet. So that's pretty interesting to start out with. But here's kind of how their staking works, right? So you're gonna stake a magic refinery in your realm by putting 500 magic in there. That realm will forever be eligible for the magic rewards as long as you're part of the guild, and we'll get into that in a second. But anytime a realmer builds a structure that requires magic, 90% will be used for generating magic emissions from the Atlas mine, and like they said, 10% goes back to them. Now, they've said that they're going to be staking the 3 Genesis Legion all class, so they're guaranteeing that. And in the future, they're going to explore harvester strategies, but nothing is written in stone yet because we really don't even know about harvesters. Now, you can reclaim your 90% of your stake at any time. However, if you claim your stake, you are no longer eligible for the magic rewards. And basically that means is if you take your 500 magic out, which is actually 450 magic because you only get 90% back, then you no longer are eligible for those rewards that they want to give you. Like I said, the one-of-ones and all that kind of stuff. Then they list out some metrics used to rank realms, such as population, renown, structure stake, treasures used, collectibles used. So it's really interesting to see what happens when they build out this season 2. But for now, I think that I've given kind of a good enough overview of what their plan is. And guys, do you have any questions about Realm or what they're doing, or do you want to kind of just jump into the discussion about BattleFly versus Realm and where we see all this going?
That was a really good explanation, Breaker. Thank you for that. I don't think I don't think I have any questions. I think one of my statements is more of just a comment. I think it's weird that you can't have multiple realms that are reaping the benefits of the staked magic. It might cause some people who have multiple realms to floor their current NFTs instead of splitting them up in between wallets, which is good for holder distribution in the long run, but in the short run could cause panic selling.
I agree with you, but I also think that it's a good plan, and I'll tell you why. First off, it's going to encourage a better distribution of owners in the Realm ecosystem, right? Because to your point, it's going to cause people to sell some of their realms. That's just going to bring more people in. Secondly, as I've personally seen in other projects, when someone has a lot of NFTs and are able to take advantage of that fact, of that edge, if you will, they become almost the whale, and it somewhat feels like a deterrent for others who feel like they can't even get ahead compared to this person. So I think that that's really nice also. And then finally, it wouldn't make sense to me that someone who has all these different realms gets all rewards, right? All these different rewards, they're just going to be accumulating more and more. They will exponentially grow faster than other holders who maybe only have one realm or two realms, kind of thing. And I think that's also bad for the ecosystem because it allows someone to really kind of flood the marketplace when they want to. And I think that that's a risk that not a lot of users would want to take on.
That makes
so
sense.
to speak.
Yeah.
And so I really like this idea because, now you don't get any clear benefit for holding multiple realms other than, you might be able to sell some more on the marketplace, but it kind of evens the playing field a little bit. So I have to give them credit here. I think it's a good move for sure.
I agree. I think when comparing and contrasting these two, it's really interesting because I do believe that Realm and BattleFly are two of the best projects that are associated with the treasure verse, and I'm not entirely sure. And it's funny that they're doing kind of similar things. They're trying to attract liquidity. They're taking a cut, and then they're using that cut to go and build partnerships. And at its core, I think they're doing very similar, if not the same things, but they're doing it in kind of with different goals. I view Realm as staking with them is really a bet on exclusively Realm, possibly a couple of other projects that they partner with, but no more than 3 or so. And with Realm, you still get to have your magic. You still get to have those magic rewards. And I think that's something, if you want to be a little bit more liquid in magic, then that's something that you would definitely want to pursue. But BattleFly I find interesting, and also a little bit of I view it as almost you're buying like a retirement fund kind of, because you're essentially buying a basket of goods. You're buying 10 projects that they are backing that will also presumably be at a similar level in terms of quality to BattleFly, because BattleFly is doing the vetting.
Yes, but you're not going to see the return as quickly as you will from Realm, which is what I'm getting from here as well.
That's a good point.
And
yes.
I think that, for some people, if they're happy waiting, then that's okay. But I know that others are going to be a little interested or inclined, if you will, to have the more immediate return because, what's the word? They have short attention spans. And so they're going to want to take what seems more real to them over a hypothetical. Though, that isn't to say that Realm certainly has the disadvantage in terms of user base at this time. I think BattleFly has, 30,000 mints, and they're going to mint more.
Yeah, that's right. They have 30,000 mints, and there will be breeding, and eventually, BattleFly's goal was I think 50,000 or 500,000 users, something insane that hopefully they reach.
Yeah.
But that's a really good point. BattleFly will probably be playing with a much larger sum of money for those 10 projects as compared to Realm, due to just numbers.
Raw numbers, absolutely. I think that BattleFly has a clear advantage here, and it's going to be interesting to see how both of them play out. But I think, like we said before, it's very strange and feels almost calculated, if you will, that both Realm and BattleFly announced around the same time that they're doing basically the same thing. And I wonder if they're coordinating together on this, perhaps even with the Treasure DAO team. We'll have to go ask End at some point if he ever pops up in the one. He seems very busy these days, or maybe he's on vacation.
It's a really good point that you brought up. I actually never thought about the fact that they could be working in tandem, or at least collaborating in some capacity on this Flywheel idea. It would be very funny or interesting if BattleFly and Realm partnered together at some point in the future to see how those possibly could team up.
Yeah, especially since we've spent a good amount of time discussing this and who will have the clear advantage, and then we find out that they're working together. I wonder how much of this is also influenced by what Magic Dragon DAO is doing, and whether it's a response to Magic Dragon DAO or a aha moment where we're like, hey, if they're doing this, we can do this too, kind of thing.
Well, yeah, that's also another really good point. I think people are realizing that they can attract liquidity. They can attract high amounts of liquidity for relatively cheap by purchasing all class honeycombs and grins, and essentially just like maxing out your Atlas mine wallet, which it's kind of a bummer. Like, it was right there the whole time. Anyone could have done it. I think Magic DAO did it first, or maybe Clock Snatchers did it first with a select group of people, then Magic DAO. It's kind of growing bigger and bigger. And again, these PvP type things will be interesting to see how they manifest, because right now we're, I think, at 3 with Magic DAO, Realm, and BattleFly. How many more can we sustain?
Right, but it's also 3 that we know of. Like you said, Clock Snatcher is doing it. We don't know if there are other groups doing it together, but you're right. How much can the ecosystem sustain, or maybe this is a good thing for the ecosystem, you know.
And honestly, there's just another point that I wanted to bring up as well, and just on talks of Clock Snatcher, and what I was saying earlier, that as of right now, this is. I mean, this also brings up another point that Dion was saying, and as of right now, in my opinion, I'd like to say that BattleFly is definitely just based off talks of Realm and BattleFly specifically. I think BattleFly is definitely going to be getting more of the limelight, and as you guys are saying as well, just because they do have a bigger user base as well. And but regarding Realm, I see here that it says in terms of their reward section on the documents for the Flywheel, it says staking magic at tier 1 not only guarantees you a base of 25% APR, but you can also increase your APR through gameplay up to 200% APR. And based off of that, I'm curious on what you guys' thoughts are, and from 4 months down or 5 months down, even not even just the time specifically, do you guys still see Battlefly end up reaping more emissions later on in the future, or do you guys think this might change based off just the numbers, or just the way that they are creating their own flywheel for Realm and Battlefly?
That's a great question, Alan. And my thinking here is that the user base is going to flock to wherever they can get the best value out of their magic staking. So if that's going directly to the Atlas mine, then they're going to do that. If it's going to be through Realm and people discover that you're getting crazy APRs by staking with Realm, then they're going to figure out a way to stake with Realm. And if they find out that one of these projects with Battlefly is giving even more than anyone expected because their own native token within that project is super valuable also, then I think that's where they're going to go too. So 5 or 6 months from now, I think it really depends on what other environmental factors are occurring that's going to entice people to be in that particular project.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with that, Breaker. I couldn't have said it better myself.
I also want to know, what are the projects that Battlefly is going to be funding? They have to be talking to some of these projects right now, right? If they're announcing this Flywheel initiative, if you will, I don't think they would have announced it without knowing what other projects they're going to be a part of.
Yeah, I definitely like to assume that they already have those 10 projects in plan, and as they indicated, they do want to have high quality projects that they definitely can see a user base attaching towards those projects, because in the end, those are the projects that are going to be incentivizing their user bases to stake their magic within their the flywheel for Battlefly. And so I'm curious to see what other projects there are going to be a part of this. I'm curious to see if even Small Brains or maybe even Bridgeworld has something going on with something like this. That would be really interesting as well. But in the end, I'm not too sure about that. I think it's might just be more of the projects possibly they're going to be listed on Treasure Trove in the future. Just to again help at the same time keeping the funding process for those projects, but at the same time again keeping that consistency of just keeping magic flowing throughout the economy. But as you're saying too, right? As of right now, these are the ways that people are usually sticking to right now in terms of reaping those emissions. But I have no doubt in my mind that we might see a new mechanic or a new systematic of where there's a different way to completely reap those emissions as well. And specifically speaking on just DeFi in general, it's always changing. It's still very, very new. And when it comes to numbers, there's countless of opportunities and countless of ways that they can make this work. So, and this is, I have no doubt in my mind that there's a lot of smart people in this, community as well. And we can definitely see some other stuff being created within the future as well, whether it's in terms of collaborations of other guilds, or honestly just DeFi lending teams as well. And there's countless of opportunities and countless of ways that they could possibly think of doing this in the future as well.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I'm happy that you brought that up because one of the other things that I wanted to kind of bring up as we move along in this episode is the idea of the gameplay that we're in right now. And for lack of a better word, the lack of diversity in the type of gameplay. We're not seeing any type of Axie style gameplay. And I don't know if any of you guys have played Axie Infinity, but there isn't a lot of interaction right now in any of these play to earn games that we're playing. Let's start with Bridge World. It's just basically click, send them off to quest, wait a couple hours, they come back and send them off again, or you craft when crafting is available, or you summon and you have to wait for 10 days for a summoning to complete. Right now with BattleFly, it's just staking. With Realm, it's just staking and collecting resources that really don't have any use yet. How do you guys feel about, like I said, this lack of diversity in gameplay, and are you concerned about it, or do you think that it's just a byproduct of kind of slowly building these new play to earn models that really didn't exist before NFTs?
I think it's a byproduct of of eventually building games. Let's take DeFi Kingdoms as an example. DeFi Kingdoms was also a glorified UI in a lot of ways. You would go click on a quest, you would do it once every 8 hours, you would get that RNG dopamine rush, and you would get a product that for a very long time had no use other than to sell for some in-game currency called gold that was essentially worthless. But people loved it. Seriously, it was worthless. People loved it. And that's because the number was going up. And as soon as, and the market was super favorable, it was the meta, it didn't matter. You could talk to DFK maxis and they would laugh at you and be like, no, this is fun. I find this fun. When it, like, in no world is it fun. And I drank the Kool-Aid. I definitely thought DFK was fun because I got to click a button 6 times a day, and I made a few $100s from like getting a random egg or accumulating more jewel or being able to summon a new hero that eventually the floor kept on bleeding out to like essentially 0. I think that all games kind of go through this process, and I think that Treasure's stated goal is eventually creating something that is just like a real game. But as you and I have spoken about, Breaker, those things take time. They take a lot of time to produce.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not denying that. And to be fair, I don't have a problem sending off my Legion Genesises for quests every day. And I'm excited to see whether or not they get a treasure when they return. And yes, I'm excited when they do produce a treasure because I could sell that on the marketplace. But, I want more interaction. And I'm getting tired of, and it's not just Bridge World that's doing this, it's almost every project in DeFi has this same style thing where it's just basically you click a button, they get locked for an X amount of time, and when that time is up, you might get a reward, you might not, and then you can do something with whatever reward that might be. You can use other NFTs to modify it. I mean, I see this in Etherworks. I see this in the Defenders of Dogewood that I'm playing as well. And, that's one of the things that I'm hoping BattleFly will kind of provide a little evolution to, because, for BattleFly's kind of talking about this arena and you're going to be playing against 99 other BattleFlies and you're going to be wagering your magic to win magic. I love that idea. I love that. I'm excited about that. That's something different. That feels good to me. That feels like I want it. That feels like what I want to get out of a play to earn game. And we just don't have a lot of that right now.
Yes. And I think that's largely because at the end of the day, these are all DeFi projects that would 2 years ago or a year ago or even like 8 months ago All you would do is stake, and that's it. The easiest way to kind of create a gamified version of that is throw some NFTs, some cool artwork, a UI with music, and then you have a quote unquote game that is staking with extra steps. Like seriously.
I love that Rick and Morty reference right there.
Yeah, that's what it is.
No,
And
no, no. You're absolutely right, and it is staking with extra steps.
and
I had something
the,
else that I wanted to bring up. No, keep going, keep going. I'll come
well,
back.
the next evolution of that is what I think kind of like what BattleFly is doing, which maybe we kind of reverted a little bit from what Axie is. To your point, Axie was interactive. You could build your team. I think it's an auto battler, so that once you participate, or are there cards?
There's cards.
There's cards.
You have
So there's strategy.
yeah. There's strategy.
Okay.
You obviously don't have control over who your opponent is or who you're facing, which also made it fun. But I got tired of that gameplay too because what I found was unless you had a really good crew of axes, you were just gonna get demolished every single time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
Interesting.
if you had a bad draw, excuse me, you were getting demolished, and it doesn't feel good to get demolished because you're not really getting anything and you're not really progressing on your experience bar. And that was the other thing too. To level up your axes took a lot of gameplay time, and you only get a certain amount per day based on like how much experience you have. I mean, it's been a while since I played it, but the gameplay wasn't that great.
I see. Well,
Alan, did you want to say something?
Yeah. Coming from a builder's perspective when it goes to this, and especially what we were taking into consideration,
Because you're on
uh,
small potions, right?
yeah, when we're building small potions as well, is there's a lot of roadblocks that come into, building a interactive game, whether it's a double A game, whether it's even a single A game. There's a lot of things that we have to take into consideration, specifically when it comes into just P2E mechanics itself. And for a lot of builders, right, there's many problems that might come in, whether it's in terms of the dev work, which usually isn't the case because majority of devs should be able to, and I believe they can build games like this that come into this. But as I was saying earlier, right, we're still are very early into DeFi, and just the components that come within this and having these games be able to still have those earning mechanisms to the point where people would want to play this specifically to earn money, then again, it comes into just marginal utility. And what I'm talking about that is I have two options. Either I play a game that earns me money, or I play a game that I play for an enjoyment. And to get the best of both, sometimes, in my opinion, is a lot more difficult than it usually seems. Um, for example, we have two games. We have Axie Infinity, or not even Axie Infinity. Let's just use Bridgeworld as an example, which is just a clicking UI game, in which you get to reap the rewards of playing it. And then you have a AAA title game like Elden Ring, where the utility that you get from it is the enjoyment of the actual gameplay itself. And right now, with just certain DeFi mechanics that we have, and that what we can use, and to incorporate that with just high level gameplay. Not that it's necessarily impossible to get done, but just to incorporate that, but at the same time, in terms of the timing, because again, Elden Ring took almost 5 years to be created, right? And there's a lot of work that goes into that. And on top of that, having your entire ethos of making it a P2E game itself, there's multiple roadblocks that builders usually face on a day-to-day basis. And as you're saying, a lot of projects, almost all projects, aren't being able to get to that point to create those truly interactive gameplay mechanics, and at the same time having those earning mechanisms within it as well. And I feel like this is something that it's just going to take time to get to that point where we can start seeing double A games and fully interactive games within the systems, but at the same time having those earning mechanics involved inside of it as well. And it's, as much as it's still possible, I believe, just with the time frames that people are given, especially within the ecosystem that we're in, specifically talking about NFTs and just Web3, it's a fast paced, building sector that we're working in, and taking this time, obviously with the amount of attraction that you're involved with, you usually tend to get lost relatively quickly. So being able to deliver and execute the things you want to execute, uh, it all comes with, again, the time, the money that you have to obviously develop these games, the funding that's processed within it, and at the same time just the level of knowledge that you can possibly produce in terms of DeFi mechanics as of right now, and with incorporation with the gameplay that you're producing. So as much as I feel like we will see this in the future, as far as I believe, we definitely can see some projects. I don't know the names, but I feel like there are already some projects doing this specifically on L1. um, as of right now, I don't know any projects that are doing this on L2, but I feel like as we dive deeper into this, more gets uncovered for DeFi, and just better game mechanics are being developed within just NFTs in general. We can definitely see this tend to unfold a lot more, because in the end, Ethereum and smart contracts were never meant to be held for game development, right? It was meant to just process just the contracts that are being outputted for the user bases, and no one really took into aspects that there was going to be game development inside of this specific sectors itself. So it's still very, very new, and I feel like it's going to take some time to get there, but at the same time, I don't think it's impossible as well. And I feel like there's a lot of builders who are trying to tackle this, and as of right now, and including us, including small potions. So it's definitely something that we're trying to figure out. And because in the end, everyone wants to play an enjoyable game, right? That would be the best of two worlds, being able to have that earning aspect, but at the same time, have a game that you can enjoy playing. And in the end, that's also going to just increase the longevity of the project itself, because you're playing it, but at the same time enjoying it, and also reaping rewards from what you're gaining from it as well. So I feel like this is like the big question that most builders are trying to solve within this space right now.
Thank you for that insight from the builder side, and it makes a lot of sense. And I think that as time goes on, we will see more improvements, more interactive gameplay. I think the markets are starved for it. I think they just really want something that has a little more substance to it than just this staking mechanic that we're all used to at this point. No, go Dion.
Something that you said, Alan, was that the Ethereum blockchain wasn't really meant for this, and I think that the Treasure team definitely agrees with that. And that's why they're making their own. They're looking to make their own chain, right?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense from like a guest perspective, certainly.
Yeah.
But I think that it also comes down to the idea that we now have blockchains that can be programmed to run applications, and it's only a logical step to say, hey, why don't we turn a game or build a game on here that can earn people money at the same time?
True.
Well, that was some really good discussion, guys. I'm really interested to see where everything goes. I mean, like I said, Seed of Life is dropping today, so I wonder if their gameplay is going to be any different than the gameplay mechanics we already see existing. Yeah, I don't know, but like both of you have said, I think in this podcast, we're still very early on. Things move fast in this space. I think the other thing that we have to hope for is that some of these developers are interested in developing good gameplay mechanics. And I love that you referenced Elden Ring, Alan, because if there's one game of recent note that I can say has amazing gameplay mechanics, it's that one. It's made me feel like that gaming experience that I had when I was younger is back. And I don't say that lightly because I've played plenty of games recently and they're fun, but there's just something about Elden Ring that the gameplay is, it gives you this sense of wonder, sense of curiosity. You don't know everything. You're kind of in the dark from the beginning, but you figure things out and you feel really good about that. And one of the things that I noticed at first was that they repeat bosses from time to time. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird and maybe a cop out, but it's not. Because let's say you fight a boss one time and you're like, oh, this was really fun. And then you fight him a second time and you're like, oh, I remember this boss. This is how I beat him the last time. And There's some bosses you'll see like 6 or 7 times. By the time you get to the 6 or 7th time, you're like, I got this guy. I'm gonna own him. And the first time you fought him, you might have died like 20 times, and it must have been frustrating as hell, but really satisfying to beat him. But it's still satisfying the sixth time you face that boss, because you're like, I know this. I've got it figured out. He's gonna die on the first try, and you feel really good about that, and you feel like you've gotten somewhere. So, gameplay is really important, but it's also about the developers knowing how to create those really good gameplay experiences. And I think that's one of the key facets here that we gotta hope one of these or multiple developers will figure out for us, because I think that's also going to be super important. I think a lot of these developers right now know finance and coding. I want the developer that knows gaming and coding. That's going to be the one to follow.
Totally agreed. And hopefully Treasure will be on the cutting edge of that.
I agree, and I think that's why it's really awesome that they use the Nintendo analogy, because that comes from a gamer's mind, not a finance mind.
True, very true.
So, just like we did last week, I'm going to read the question. I want to know your thoughts, and then what you think the magic respondees, is that even a word? The respondents felt. All right. So, again, first question, what's your general feeling on Treasure DAO ecosystem today? Guys, I know that you're usually in line with the audience, but where do you stand today, Dion?
More south than last week, probably 2.5 to 3 is where I'll be.
Okay, and then Alan, what about you?
I'd like to say, as much as I'm still bullish on Treasure, again, just a little bit south from last week as well. Probably a very high 4 to a low 5. So
All right. So we're not selling just yet, because Alan is still close to 5.
no, I'm still there. I haven't moved too
Yeah.
much. Don't get me wrong. I'm still where I was, but I have moved just a little bit lower to where it was from last week.
And I'm sorry, Dion, where do you think the respondents landed?
I would say the respondents are probably closer to me. Probably 3 to 3.4. That's my guess.
And Alan, what about you?
I'd say around a high. I'd say around a 4. Honestly, I'd say around a 4 to high 3.
Okay. Well, I think you'll both be pleasantly surprised. More than half the respondents are at a 5 right now.
No way.
That's what I like to see. That's what I like to see.
Yeah, I was a little surprised myself. The next question was an interesting question. We hadn't really kind of touched on this yet, but who's your favorite Treasure DAO Twitter personality? And we listed off a couple of the more popular ones: Mike Crypto, Sunny, Arcanic, Cal, and Legion Commander, who are kind of sharing the magic minute, if you will, these days. End, our good friend End, Jumpman, John Patton, and Commonopoly. And Dion, do you follow any of these personalities? And if so, which one is your favorite?
I'm fairly confident I follow all of them, and I don't think End will ever leave my number one spot.
Okay. And Alan, what about you?
Yeah. I mean, I've know a good amount of all of them. Honestly, I talked to a lot of them as well.
Well, we got to
Honestly,
get some of them on here then.
yeah,
Need to-
definitely. Yeah, no,
need
we
to-
will. We will.
Okay, good.
And yeah, they're all amazing people. It's really hard for me to choose, honestly, because they are all giving great insights and great info in their own ways. But for me, I'd have to go with Sunny, just
Okay.
because he was one of the guys who really helped me gain information in the first place and really helped me gain an understanding of Treasure since the beginning. So I guess you could say I like to consider him as almost as a mentor to some extent. So I definitely want to give him a shout out for that.
All right. Well, that's very noble of you. And Dion, what do you think the respondents said? Who do you think the most popular Treasure DAO Twitter personality is?
I think End. I think End's a pretty sound favorite across both the one and his his story is super interesting about how he got involved.
Okay, okay. And Alan, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd have to say the same, honestly. I mean, realistically, who doesn't love and hate End at the same time? So I'd have to say that as well. I'd have to go with End.
Okay, okay. Well, you're both wrong.
Oh,
I wouldn't say it's overwhelming, but John Patton was the number one Twitter personality based on the respondents. And then number two was Mike Crypto, followed by a tie for third, which was Commonopoly, End, and Arcanic.
Okay,
wow.
I can see
Well,
that.
it makes sense. John created, right?
Right. But
And
I don't know if he's like a really big Twitter personality. Maybe he is.
he does tweet a lot. I
He
see him
does
on
tweet a
Twitter very
lot.
often.
I guess he is a big Twitter personality. All right. Next question was, how do you feel about the announcement that other projects will be earning small coin? And this was on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being like, I'm not really thrilled about it, to 5 being like, that's awesome. Let's see what happens. Dion, what do you think? How do you feel about other projects earning small coin?
I would say it's a 3. The reason why is because I haven't fully been able to weigh the pros and cons. The short list is the pro is we're getting new layer 1 participants. I think that's very exciting. We're bringing in new money. We're bringing in new people who are going to be excited about the project, and we have a whole new community of people who are builders, creators, and community members that we get to welcome in. I think that's all net positive. Net negative is you're increasing the outflow of you're distributing it more across, which could devalue it possibly.
Makes sense. And what do you think the respondents said? Where do you think they were at?
I think that overall people would be pretty happy about it. So I would say between a 3.5 to a 4.5.
Okay, okay. Alan, what about you? Same questions.
Honestly, for me, it's a 5. Straight 5 for that. I think it's great. I think it's absolutely amazing. We always talk about this in a lot of the episodes. Again, just Treasure having that problem of just everyone piggybacking project to project. Just eco to eco, and it's a problem that you know Treasure kind of faced, and I feel like this is going to be a big bridging community from specifically just a lot of L1 blue chips towards Treasure itself, and it's a great thing that they're doing. I definitely think it's also something to take into consideration about the outflow that Dean was talking about. That's definitely a really good insight. I never even thought about that, and I definitely could again involve that dilution within the coin itself. But I feel like Treasure is obviously taking that into consideration, and they know that these are certain measures that have to be wary about. And I feel like they'll have things covered, and it's a straight 5 for me. Honestly, I think it's a really big step.
Okay, cool. And what about the respondents? How do you feel the respondents felt?
Honestly, the same. I think it's a 5 too. I
Okay.
think this is what people wanted to see, and they're finally getting what they wanted Treasure to deliver. So I think everyone's happy to hear about this.
Well, most of the respondents were either a 4 or 5, but some were a 3, and nobody were a 2 or a 1. So it seems like everybody's kind of stoked about this, even just from the fact that no one responded with a 1 or a 2. So, and I think that's to be expected. This might have been a layup question out there. Um, next to last question was, what do you think about Treasure DAO building their own AMM? And for those out there, that's an automated market maker exchange. Dion, how do you feel about this?
I'm very excited about it. I think that Treasure creating their own AMM will further funnel all Magic transactions back into their war chest and their treasury. And I think that's a net positive. And I think it sets the team up really well for that, again, that composability as new coins, i.e., small coin or Nectar with BattleFly, to be traded freely on the marketplace.
Right on. And how do you think the respondents felt about this?
I think that they were also super positive.
Okay, and Alan, what about you? Please tell us why you're super bullish on this.
Yeah, honestly, I'm really bullish on the MM as well. I think it's a great idea. I think it helps keep everything more intact within Treasure. And again, just helping to just build a really strong structure and foundation for the flywheel systematic that Treasure is, based around. And I think it's great. I think it's going to help keep everything flowing at an equilibrium and keep everything constant at the same time. And I'm really excited to see how it works out in the future as well, as they gain a higher market cap, they gain a bigger liquidity pool, and everything is just, again, building a stronger structure for Treasure as a whole.
Yes, certainly. And what do you think the respondents said?
I'd probably like to say they gave it a 4 or 5 as well. I really don't see necessarily too much of a downside to this. Uh, I think overall this will be a generally good play that Treasure is making, and I feel like everyone else is happy to see this as unfolding as well.
I agree with both you guys. I just want to say that. And while we didn't do a 1 to 5 scale on this particular question, the answers were we already have sushi. We don't need another exchange. Heck yeah, I'm excited for Treasure DAO building a broader ecosystem. And then we also have what's an AMM or no opinion. Overwhelmingly, guys, which I think no one's surprised. Heck yeah, I'm excited for Treasure DAO building a broader ecosystem. So, we actually had 2 people vote. We already have sushi. We don't need another exchange. Yeah, I didn't think it would be unanimous, but I'm surprised that people wouldn't be in favor of this. Last question. We do this one every week. We've changed up again the projects a little bit, but which recently launched or upcoming project are you most hyped about? And this week we had Seed of Life, BattleFly, Smithy DAO, Lost Samurais, Shogun War, Realm, Small Potions, Magic Dragon DAO, and Tales of Illyria. Dion and Alm, I don't really think we need to know which one you're most hyped about, but where do you think the audience is most hyped?
Seed of Life. Or
Seed
Realm.
of Life?
But Seed of Life by an edge.
Okay. And Alm, what about you? What do you think the respondents said? And you can't say small brains.
Honestly, I'd say BattleFly or Seed of Life as well. One or the other, honestly.
All right. I like this. This is good. So, first off, no one voted for Seed of Life.
Wow.
Small Potions and Tales of Illyria each had the lowest amount of votes. Next lowest was Lost Samurais. Then came BattleFly, and overwhelmingly, which was like almost 50% of the vote, was Realm.
Nice.
Yeah, a lot of people hyped about Realm. It's a good sign, I think.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, no, go.
Oh, it's a good community. Every time I pop in that Discord, everyone seems always super positive, very welcoming, and super bullish on the project.
I agree with you, and I don't know if it's Jonah who's just kind of running the show, or if he's doing a lot himself, but he seems to be very systematic, or she, I shouldn't assume, but they seem very systematic about what they're doing, and they're not over-promising, which I think is really important in this ecosystem.
Yeah,
because as we've seen with a number of other projects, it's not exactly that they're over-promising, but they're announcing things and taking a long time to deliver. Whereas with Realm, they're not really announcing much, and when they do announce something, it's almost like they've delivered it in time for the announcement.
Yeah, that is a good point. They do have a very good announcement release schedule that I think a lot of other projects in the Treasure system could learn from.
Yes, definitely. Well, that's another episode of the Magic Hour, guys. And that concludes another episode of Magic Hour, friends. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to our YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you can listen to your podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter at Magic Hour Pod. All the links are found on our link tree, which is in the show notes. From all of us, we appreciate your support for Bridge World.